Doing a price update for the best $300 old flagships to buy. I think I got one mid-ranger in here as well too. But yeah, so I did the best 200 to $250 one, so check that out. So the price drops on these aren't super dramatic, and I want to start off with the Note 20 Ultra. I don't think we're going to see a price drop on this phone anymore in the used refurbished marketplaces. It looks like it's just staying still at this 70, 380 price point. And I think it's because it's the last Note that's getting security patches with SD card support. And it is still a fantastic phone. If you checked out my videos I have on it, the design on the Note still looks great. It still has that boxy design, stainless steel frame, glass back. It's IP68 dust and water resistant, and of course you have the built-in S Pen on here as well too that you can take advantage of. And like I said, one of the main things with this phone is you do have SD card support on this device. This is a very big phone. It comes in at 6.9 inches. It's a dynamic AMOLED display, 120 Hz HDR10 plus. It's 1440p 496 for the PPI. Overall, a beautiful display. But again, remember, if you're going to get this phone, you can only use the 120 Hz at 1080p. This phone got its last major OS update with Android 13 One UI 5. So this phone is currently getting security patches right now. So it'll still be up to date as far as security wise. And then it's running the Snapdragon 865 chip on here. And honestly, this chip is still blazing fast. There's really nothing this phone can't do. It can play PUBG at 90 frames. It pretty much blows through anything you put on it. As far as game wise, application wise, it's still a very, very fast phone. And like I said, it beats a lot of mid-rangers when it comes to the price to spec ratio as well too. Again, SD card support, 128 gigs of internal storage and 12 gigs of RAM is on board. You have pretty good sounding stereo speakers, a good amount of bass here. And then you also have on here the under the display fingerprint sensor. It's ultrasonic, it's very fast. And the cameras, I think, are still doing pretty well. If you saw my S23 Ultra comparison to this phone, it still takes pretty good shots. 108 megapixel standard at 12 megapixel periscope telephoto, does 5 times optical zoom. Then you have the 50 times hybrid zoom. You have a 12 megapixel ultra wide with 8K 24 video with a 10 megapixel selfie that also shoots in 4K 60. Overall, like I said, compared to the newest phone, yeah, it doesn't do as good in low light, but if we're outdoors and stuff like that, it still takes fantastic shots. You get really good shots and you get a good amount of zoom out of this phone, which you can get really good shots with the 5 times, even the 10 times shots on here. It still look pretty good. Also, the battery life on here is just okay. Like I said, I got mine's refurbished, and I can squeeze about 6 hours of screen on time out of it as a light user. It has a 4500 milliamp hour battery, 25-watt wired charging, wireless and reverse wireless charging is on board. So overall, it's just a solid phone for anybody who wants, a flagship phone, powerful, and you don't want to spend a ton of money. Next on the list is the Pixel 6 Pro. This is another great phone coming in at around 370, 380. And it's a very good phone. I only see this phone actually coming down in price as the year goes on. But what you'll find pretty interesting, if you watch my Pixel 6 Pro versus Pixel 8 Pro, you will find that a lot of people in the comments were like, hey man, I'm just going to stick with my Pixel 6 Pro because it's still a really good phone, even compared to the newest phone out right now. So this phone still has pretty much the same design, aluminum frame. You have the pixel camera bar design. It's IP68 dust and water resistant. It has the LTPO AMOLED display at 120 Hz HDR10 plus. It's 1440p 6.7 inches, and it has a kind of like a boxy feel, but it's not too boxy to where it's uncomfortable. It's 512 for the PPI, and overall just a beautiful display. Honestly, no complaints. It is a curved panel, but honestly, very, very nice display. It's upgradable to Android 14, and then you also have the original Google Tensor chip, which is fine. I think for most people, it still does a pretty good job. You're able to play games. And again, it's not going to be like the best device on the list as far as like, for my hardcore gamers on a budget. But you can casually play games. You can play PUBG on here, Call of Duty. It does a fantastic job at that. And like I said, it's running stock Android, so it's a super, super smooth device. You also have 128 gigs of internal storage and 12 gigs of RAM. Pretty good sounding stereo speakers, lots of bass on here. Under the display fingerprint sensor is optical. Only issue with unlocking on this phone is that you don't have face unlock, honestly. The best thing about this phone is that it still takes really good pictures. Honestly, the best photo taker on this list as far as stills. Even when you compare it to the Pixel 8 Pro, it's still taking just as good photos. It's got a 15 megapixel standard, a 48 megapixel telephoto, 4 times optical zoom, and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. It shoots in 4K 60, 11.1 ultra wide selfie camera on here. It shoots in 4K 30. Like I said, excellent cameras on here. Even compared to the newest phone, it's still taking excellent stills. So honestly, if you are looking for, just the best camera phone on a budget as far as stills go, you can't really get much better than this phone. It's absolutely phenomenal when it comes to photography. The battery life on here is okay. It's a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, 23 watt wired charging, 23 watt wireless charging. It also has reverse wireless charging, and battery life on here, it's okay. You can squeeze about 6 hours out of this phone as well too. Overall, just an excellent pick for anybody on a budget who wants to take the best photos. Next is the S21 Ultra, and this phone is pretty interesting because this phone you can find actually just a little bit cheaper than the Note 20 Ultra, and like I said, it's because of the SD card support. This phone does not have it, and it doesn't have the built-in S Pen support, even though it supports it. But I think that's why. So I probably see this phone dropping in price faster than the Note, honestly. But this is still one of my favorite phones of this year, and to recommend to people who want an old flagship, I just absolutely love it. There's a lot to love about this phone. First off is the design. I still think this is one of Samsung's best designs, unless we're talking about like the Note 10. But this is a fantastic design. It's such a cool, sort of like a sci-fi looking design, especially the black color. It's IP68 dust and water resistant, and it has a really, really nice feel in the hand. It's not super boxy, and it's very comfortable to hold, even for a big phone that is at 6.8 inches. And it's dynamic AMOLED, 120 hertz, HDR10 plus at 1500 nits peak brightness, full 1440p, 515 for the PPI. It's a beautiful panel. Like I said, so easy to hold. I absolutely love this display. One of my favorite all-time displays. And this phone, it is upgradable to Android 13, and it will get Android 14 as well too, which is really nice. This phone is running the Snapdragon 888 processor, and then you also have, again, no SD card support, 128 gigs of internal storage and 12 gigs of RAM on the base model. You can honestly find the 256 for pretty cheap as well too. And performance wise on here, it's still a very fast phone. It pretty much blows through any applications, but it's not just this phone. Is a lot of the 888 phones, they kind of seem to get a little bit warmer than I would like. If you're doing like really intense stuff, video recording at high res, or just gaming for a long period of time. I've never had this phone actually crash on me or do anything like that, or overheat or give any type of overheat signals, but that's just something I noticed. It's just not as efficient with heat as an 855 or 865. As far as the speakers go, the speakers are okay, good amount of bass, pretty good sound quality, great fingerprint scanner, and then you get all your bells and whistles, Samsung desktop support, and like I said, it does support S Pen support as well too, which is pretty cool. You can buy that case for it. This phone has a fantastic camera. It's 108 megapixel standard, 10 megapixel periscope telephoto, 10 times optical, 10 megapixel telephoto 3 times, and then a 12 megapixel ultra wide. It shoots in 8K24 with a 40 megapixel selfie that shoots in 4K 60. Fantastic cameras. I compared it to the S23 Ultra, and it does a fantastic job. I think still takes excellent shots, great dynamic range, great color, really good zoom quality on here. And yeah, it's just the cameras are fantastic on this phone. 5,000 milliamp hour battery, 25 watt wire charging, and then you have wireless and reverse wireless. Basically, as far as the battery life goes, it's still pretty much the same as something like on the Note or most Samsung flagships. Samsung just made a big improvement with battery life, but this is still averaging around 6 hours as well too. All right, so next is the iPhone 12. Again, this phone is in the upper $300 price point. Really good phone to buy. I think if you buy this phone, you really won't have to upgrade for a couple years, honestly. This phone is an aluminum frame, glass back, and it still has a really nice modern design. Honestly, it looks exactly like the the iPhone 14, just with the camera switch around. So it's still got a really nice modern design. IP68 dust and water resistant, and you also do have on here a really nice screen. It's the XDR OLED display. It's HDR10, and you also have 1200 nits peak brightness at 6.1 inches. It's 1170 by 2532, 460 for the PPI. overall a very nice and sharp display, no issues at all. And again, somewhat, fairly decent when it comes to direct sunlight as well too. You can still see it. This phone, it has iOS 17 on it with the Apple A14 chip. Honestly, it's still blazing fast. I did like a little speed test with this in the 15 Pro Max, and honestly, it was pretty much on par with the 15 Pro Max. So you're not really missing out on when it comes to speed and stuff. And that same thing goes for gaming. The average person playing PUBG, Call of Duty, is still going to be a beast when it comes to performance. So no issues at all with this phone when it comes to speed. It's still very, very fast. 64 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM on the base model. You can get the 128 gig, for a pretty good price as well. Speakers on here sound really great, really good amount of bass on here. You also have, again, Face ID, of course. The cameras and stuff, the cameras are still pretty good. Like I said, I did a comparison with the 15 Pro Max, and you have a 12 megapixel standard at 12 megapixel ultra wide. It shoots in 4K 60. 12 megapixel selfie shoots in 4K 60. Honestly, the stills look really good still on the iPhone 12. If you check out that video, still great dynamic range, great colors. I think the average person is still going to be really happy with the photography on here, and also the video is still really solid on this phone as well too. So honestly, no complaints when it comes to image quality with this phone. This phone does have a 2,815 milliamp hour battery, wireless charging with MagSafe, so you can do the whole MagSafe accessory thing, and you also have wireless charging. Battery life on here is pretty decent. It gets somewhere around that 6-hour range, and I think mine has 87% battery health, so it's still a pretty good phone to check out. I think honestly one of the best phones you can get if you want an iPhone. All right, so I want to throw the Poco F5 in here. I know it's not an old flagship, but you can get it for around the same price as a lot of these phones, and you can get it brand new as well. And this is a phone that I really liked. It had a all plastic design, which I think was the only kind of negative thing about this phone. But again, it's not too bad. It still looks very nice. It's IP53 dust and splash proof, so you can see where they kind of cut the cost with this phone. But yeah, so this phone has a pretty nice display. It's a 6.67-inch display. It's HDR10 plus AMOLED, 120 hertz, 1000 nits peak brightness, 1080p, 395 for the PPI. So it's just an overall very nice display to look at. No issues there. This phone is running Android 13. It will get Android 14, and it does have the Snapdragon 7 Plus Gen 2 processor, which is a pretty nice chip. So it was very, very fast, and I think that was the highlight with this phone. It was pretty fast. I was able to play PUBG at 90 frames, and it was just a very speedy and fast phone for this price point. Pretty much gives you kind of like flagship quality performance on here. So you have 256 gigs of internal storage and 8 gigs of RAM. Pretty nice stereo speakers on here. And what was really cool about this phone is this phone actually does have a headphone jack. So if you're somebody that's looking for a phone with a headphone jack, this one does have that. You also have an infrared port on here, which is pretty nice. So I really like these Xiaomi phones for that reason, because you can pretty much control TVs, air conditioners, with this infrared port, which is pretty cool. So you kind of have like a universal remote, and you also have pretty good cameras. A lot of you guys were impressed when I compared it to the S21 Ultra. It has a 64 megapixel standard, 8 megapixel ultra wide, and a 2 megapixel macro. It shoots in only 4K 30 though, and a 16 megapixel selfie that only shoots in 1080p 60. So not super impressive camera specs, but as far as still photography, I was actually pretty impressed with the photo quality I was getting out of the Poco F5 for sure. And also another highlight with this phone is that it does have a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, and with a 67 watt fast charging brick in the box, which was pretty awesome. So you get a really, really nice fast charging speed. It charges very, very fast. So yeah, overall, I really like this phone. Like I said, it has a couple cutbacks to it. It's not a flagship phone, but overall, I really enjoyed it for the price, and I think that it has some pretty nice stuff with it. So be sure to let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.